This is Columbus Concerns, a public affairs presentation of North American Broadcasting. Here's your host, Mark Neuse.
And good morning, and thanks so much for joining us today on Columbus Concerns. We're going to talk today about Helpline. Now, Helpline is the Suicide Prevention Coalition in Delaware and Morrow Counties, and they have a big event coming up, and they do a lot of good work, and we're going to talk about all the things that they do. First off, Sarah Lee Jefferson is with us. She's the Suicide Prevention Program Manager, and Sarah, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
And she also brought along some other folks who we will introduce here in just a little bit. First of all, for those who don't know, tell us what is Helpline and how do you do what you do?
Mm-hmm. So Helpline is several different things, but our big mission is to support and strengthen the emotional health and wellness of the community. So our big thing is through doing that through education, empowering, and connecting. So we are available 24/7 through our hotline, and if you ever want that number, it is 1-800 and then 684-2324. And then we also have a texting feature because sometimes it's easier to text in about this stuff than actually say the words out loud. Mm-hmm. So our texting, you would text Helpline at 898-211. And the big thing for Helpline is we want you to realize that you're never alone.
Mm-hmm. And how big of a problem is suicide right now in Delaware County and in the country?
So in general, suicide is the second leading cause of death for ages 15 to 24. And then in Delaware, we have just had one suicide by youth so far this year, which is really exciting because that kind of shows that the evidence-based program that we're giving to the middle school and high school students, so that's called the Signs of Suicide, that's actually being really effective in the counties that we are serving.
And talk a little bit about the helpline that you have that people can call. What happens if somebody calls and who should call? Someone who's thinking about suicide, a family member, or anybody?
Great question. Anybody can call because sometimes when you're trying to assist someone through this, it can be really hard to know what to do or what to say. And sometimes, really honestly, it's just about being there. Sometimes there are no right words to say, but Helpline can be a great resource if you're struggling with trying to help somebody, being able to call in or text us about what's going on with that individual, or if you're the one struggling. Sometimes it can be hard to let people around you know what's going on with you, and sometimes talking to that outside resource and a stranger can be a lot more beneficial than someone close to you.
So I assume that you have a lot of folks, a lot of volunteers who man those phones.
We actually don't have any volunteers that man the phones. They are just paid employees through Helpline.
Oh, so they're trained to do what they do.
Yes, they are trained professionals, and they're really amazing at what they do. I'm really lucky to be able to hear a lot of the calls that go on and how they handle it, and I really admire what my coworkers do.
Also on the program with us today, before we get into your walk that's coming up that I know you want to talk about, we also have a couple of suicide prevention educators with us. Beth Bidstrup is here, and R.J. Schumann is also with us. And thanks so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Beth, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you do it.
So our main program, I believe Sarah mentioned, is called the Signs of Suicide program. So we go into middle schools and high schools throughout Delaware and Morrow counties. We give that program to the students, encouraging them to seek help if they are struggling, and we also teach them how to help a friend or family member or anybody that's surrounding them that may be struggling as well. At the end of that presentation, we also are screening the kids for depression. So it's a really, really good opportunity to catch those kids and get them the help that they need before it becomes, an issue of suicide.
And RJ, when you talk to these kids, I'm sure they have lots of questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, they're great. Being with the kids, both middle schooler and high schoolers, sometimes more questions than others, but we go in and we talk about the signs. We kind of talk about what the experience is like, dealing with mental health, dealing with those suicidal thoughts, teaching them to really recognize those signs, how to identify it in themselves, identify it in their friends, maybe even family members. And they all enjoy the program. And yeah, it's a good time for us. We enjoy doing it. They get a lot out of it. And again, with that screening that we do, And we get to do that for pretty much all the middle schools and high schools in Delaware and Morrow County. So we reach a lot of kids, about 5,000 kids a year.
Beth, what's the reaction from the schools, the principals and administrators and the teachers?
I would say mostly positive. We feel so grateful that we're able to do that for the kids. It's just an amazing opportunity because the more we talk about suicide, the more we can prevent it. So we're just super grateful for the schools to welcome us in and try to help as many students, kids as possible.
And RJ, you mentioned middle and high schoolers. At what grade level does the education start?
Yeah, typically in a middle school, we're seeing seventh graders for the most part. A couple schools we'll see eighth graders, but mostly it's seventh graders that we see. And then in the high school programs, we're mostly talking to freshmen. We usually go into the health classes, and typically a student will take health as a freshman. And so we're seeing seventh graders and ninth graders. Now in the middle school program, we kind of focus a lot more on depression, just mental health in general, and getting help for that and what that looks like. And then in the high school program, then we focus a little bit more on the suicide part of it.
Today we're talking about Helpline, which is their mission is to prevent suicides. They serve Delaware and Morrow counties. And Sarah, again, give us the phone number that people can call, and I know you have a website as well.
Yes, you can always call us at 1-800-684-2324. And then our website is www.helpline, and then it's DELMOR.org.
And tell us about your event coming up on September 7th.
Yes, I'm really excited about the 9th annual. It is called the Suicide Prevention Walk, and it's from the Delaware Suicide Prevention Coalition, but that is part through Helpline. So that's going to take place on September 7th between 9 a.m. to noon. So really registration will take place between 9 to 10, so feel free to show up between that. And then we're going to have tons of vendors out there, tons of fun activities, even face painting. So it's going to be a really great time. It'll take place at the Bennis Room, so that's a green roof at Ohio Wesleyan University, and it is free to attend.
And is this one of those events that you've had before, or is this something new?
So this is our 9th annual. So this is actually the 9th year that we've been doing this. So we're really hoping for an increase in attendance. And so far, the way that registration's looking, it looks like we're being successful in doing that. So I'm really excited about that.
I know the fun thing about these walks, too, is a lot of times it's not just individuals, but you'll get maybe an office together and wants to do a team building event or something. And they all come in their fun T-shirts and everything. I'm sure it's a lot of fun. Do you have any vendors and everything, too, at the scene?
Yes, we have a lot of mental health providers that are going to be there. And then one thing that we offer for free to everybody that comes is a free shirt. So that's another incentive to come. And you also get a free bag. And it is free to register. And we do accept donations, but it's not the big reason why we have our walk. The big reason for our walk is to raise awareness. So we walk 1.5 miles through historic Delaware. We'll have signs that show statistics, that show messages of hope for people who are struggling. The big thing is for all of us to come together as one. So whether you've lost a loved one to suicide, you've attempted and survived, or you're struggling right now, just realize that tomorrow needs you. And that's the big point of the walk, is for all of us to come together.
And I know that it's interesting because suicide is one of those things that it's hard to talk about. It can be very painful, of course, for everyone involved, but talking about it helps. Is that right?
Yes, and that is one of the big things that even after we'd be with the students for a couple of days, they still wouldn't believe us that talking about this stuff helps, because it can be hard to talk about, difficult to talk about. But I feel like the more we have these conversations, the more people will know that it's okay if you feel that way, because the more we have those conversations, more people will come forward.
Beth, do you also man the phones? Do you take phone calls?
We do not, as suicide prevention educators. We are in the schools, and also I believe you'll be talking about later the new program, QPR. So we are giving presentations.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And tell us, RJ, tell us a little bit about the kids. Do they open up to you? Do they talk about the issues pretty freely?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, some more than others, but there definitely are kids that they're very open about this. They're much more aware of this stuff than one might think. They live these lives. They're very aware that these things exist, that they go on. They live with it every day, them, their friends. And many of them are very open about their experiences. We'll often have, after a class, kid come up to us, and kind of tell their story, some things they've been through, and even in class share some of their experiences. And it's very helpful for the other kids, again, to help them realize, because there may be, many kids in the class that don't experience it themselves. They don't know anybody that necessarily does. They know it's a thing, but they don't have that full understanding. So realizing, and that's one of the things we try to touch on, realizing that there are so many kids like in that school right there with them, in that class with them, that deal with this stuff that they just don't know about, because again, we don't talk about it a whole lot. We like to keep those things to ourselves because for many reasons, we're afraid of that stigma, what other people will think. Somebody will think something negatively about me. Somebody will judge me in some way. And so a lot of times there's many reasons, but we're afraid to open up and talk about it. But some of them, surprisingly, and thankfully, are open about it and willing to talk about it. So that's great.
Again, we're talking with representatives from Helpline. They help prevent suicides in Delaware and Morrow County. And don't forget, they have their big walk coming up on Saturday, September 7th. It's the 9th Annual Suicide Prevention Walk, and you can visit their website or give them a call to get more information about that. Another one of the suicide prevention educators with us is Nathan Bonifiglio. And I know they've touched a couple of times, Nathan, on QPR. Tell us what those letters stand for and what the program is.
Yeah, so QPR stands for Question, Persuade, and Refer. And that is our new program that we're going to be rolling out here soon, where we will train adults and professionals on how to deal with someone in a suicidal crisis. And it sounds a lot like CPR. That's for a purpose. So CPR is used to save someone's life in terms of like a cardiovascular emergency. QPR is used to save someone's life in terms of a suicidal emergency.
So the first Q is question. What does that mean?
Yes, question. So that means to not be afraid to ask the question. If you notice signs in someone that they may be experiencing any sort of depression or suicidal ideation, if you notice any of these signs that we'll teach them about, you need to ask them straightforward. Don't be afraid to ask, are you considering suicide? Are you considering harming yourself? Just start the conversation there.
And then the P? The
P is persuade. You want to persuade them not only to stay alive, but to get help. So it kind of parallels the program that we give to our middle schoolers and high schoolers. We use the acronym ACT, A-C-T, Acknowledge, Care, Tell. So the care part also coincides with the persuade. So let them know that you care about them, persuade them to stay alive and to seek help.
Mm-hmm. And refer?
And refer them to get help. In our case, we will encourage people to refer friends, family members to Helpline, because we have all the connections that we can put them in contact with doctors, therapists. But if you do know a doctor or a therapist that you recommend, you want to refer your loved one to them.
Sarah, getting back to the QPR, a lot of people may say to themselves, well, I don't want to talk about it because it might encourage them to do it, or it might put it in their mind to do it, but that's really not the case, is it?
It's never the case, and that is, I think, one of the biggest myths, and I think one of the biggest reasons why it's taken us so long as a society to even be having these conversations, because a lot of people do think that as soon as we say that word, it's going to introduce it into that person's mind. Well, I have great news for you. That is never the case, and if that person is thinking about it, it's going to give them an opportunity to share how they feel, but then you an opportunity to do something about how that person's feeling. So it is never a bad thing to say the S word and say suicide.
RJ, getting back to the schools for a minute, do you work with the staff at the schools at all, like the guidance counselors and those people?
Yeah, absolutely. The guidance counselors are a pretty important part of the process, because after we do the screening on the last day, usually we're there in the middle schools for 2 days, 3 days for the high schools, and at the end of it, we do that depression screening, and that goes to the counselors, and so the counselors will see those, get the results, notice anybody who's, their screening raises some flags or something that maybe something's going on, and then the counselors are able to talk to them. And a lot of schools will also have some outside help, usually that will come in on those days from various agencies that will come in, counselors, professional mental health counselors that come in and kind of help them, because there's a lot of kids sometimes, and in some schools there may be one counselor at that school, and that's a lot for one. We can have a class of 25 kids, and there may be 6-7 kids that they maybe need to talk to, where there may be something going on just in one class. And throughout a day, you could have 20 kids that need to be talked to. So the guidance counselors, school staff, it's very important that we have them on board with it, and they're great about it. And it's a way that we can identify these kids and be able to talk to them and get them help. A lot of times they're aware of some of the kids already, obviously because they know the students. But it's great sometimes when somebody kind of pops up on the radar that they had no idea about, and we can catch some of those kids and start having conversations with them.
Sarah, I see a lot of talk recently, and I'll find out if it's a myth or not. But they talk about how kids today, especially with the way they interact with one another, they're more sheltered. They're more alone than they used to be because they rely on social media. There's not as much interaction with other people. That they're isolated. Do you see that, and is that a contributing factor?
So isolation is one of the big signs of suicide. I would think that they're most plugged in, though, all the time. So it's almost like they're connecting too much to an individual. So say they're like dealing with a bullying situation. You used to be able to just go home and shut the door and it's done. But now your phone's with you all the time, where that just continuously goes on. So I feel like kids are almost too connected, almost in an unhealthy way, where they're not making that social connection like in person, actually going and hanging out with each other versus just sitting there and texting or Snapchatting, whatever it may be. So I feel like they don't have as much personal connection, but I see where the isolation of that could be a cause of suicide there.
Yeah, they're more connected than ever, but at the same time, ironically, it isolates them more. There is research and studies that, since smartphones became more commonplace and almost every kid has one, that anxiety rates have dramatically increased, and some of these things, mental health concerns, have dramatically increased, and it coincides with about the time that these smartphones started becoming more commonplace, and they're fantastic, obviously for many reasons for us. But at the same time, there is some obvious downsides of it, and it does maybe increase that isolation sometimes, but yet they're still always connected, to certain things. But yeah, as Sarah said, that isolation, and you mentioned, because when I heard you say like alone, that's a big part of the suicide. Feeling alone, feeling isolated, disconnected. I don't feel that other people get me or understand things. And you combine that with feeling like a burden, right? They feel like a burden, that they're not living up to expectations, whether it's themselves or expectations parents have of me, or the people around me that I think have expectations. And so I feel like I'm screwing up. I'm not doing a good enough job at whatever it is that I'm doing. And then it leads to feelings of, people would be better off without me because I'm not doing things right. I'm a burden to other people, even to myself. And people would be better off without me because I'm just bringing everybody down. You combine that feeling like a burden with that I feel isolated and alone, and that's kind of a big part of the recipe for then starting to have those suicidal thoughts. And that's
when you step in and tell them there is help.
And that's when some of those thoughts come, and that's the good news, that there is stuff that we can do about this, even though like you may not believe it at the time, right? Whether it's the kids, whether it's adults, right? Because again, adults have even higher rates of suicide. And so it's like this for all of us. We start feeling those things. There is things that we can do, even though maybe you don't believe it in the moment.
Well, we're almost out of time, and I have about a million more questions. But let's get here at the end, Sarah. Tell us again about the walk, which is coming up on September 7th. Where, when, and how can people get involved?
Yes, you can join us. It will be at Ohio Wesleyan University. It will take place in the Bennis Room, which is the green-roofed building. So look for that. And you can register on our website at helpline.delmor.org/walk, but you can also register the day of. So don't worry if you don't get online and register before the walk. You can always just show up the day of, and we'll get you a free shirt and bag.
And if someone is listening to this and they really feel the need to give you guys a call, what's the phone number again for Helpline?
Yes, if you're struggling or you know someone who is, always feel free to call Helpline 24/7, 7 days a week at 1-800-684-2324.
From Helpline, we'd like to thank our guests for being here today. Sarah Lee Jefferson. Beth Bidstrup is also a suicide prevention educator who's with us today. Another educator, R.J. Schumann. And we'd also like to thank Nathan Bonifiglio, another one of the educators, for being here. Thanks very much for shedding some more light on Helpline. We appreciate it.
Thanks
Thank you
for
very
having
much.
us.
Thanks for your
Thanks for
time.
having us.
Thanks for listening to Columbus Concerns, a public affairs presentation of North American Broadcasting. You can send questions or comments about today's show to Columbus Concerns in care of this station, 1458 Dublin Road, Columbus 43215. Or email us at columbusconcerns@napcomedia.com.